Hello, and welcome to the 5th episode of Let's Take 5, where we pick a great from Hollywood and look at 5 films by them and decide why they are that good. My name is Austin Luger.
And my name is Ray Martindale.
And this is our 5th and final movie about Robert De Niro. We have previously covered the Godfather Part II, The Deer Hunter, Raging Bull, and Midnight Run, and now it is time for Heat, his 1995 drama directed by Michael Mann. And also, we have our very first guest to the show. This is very exciting. We have Nick Rogers. He is one of the chief film critics for thefilmyacht.com. He has written for Playboy.com. And he is a pub quiz extraordinaire in terms of writing and participating. You're champion, even.
I am the champion. I can say that, yes. National champion at a pub trivia quiz. So there are no questions about Heat, though, or De Niro, really.
Oh, then you're off.
Right.
We'll edit you out.
Was that a solo event or was that a team pub?
Oh Lord, no. I would never. I'd be lucky to finish in the top 70% if I were by myself. This was a team effort.
Okay.
But I am called upon to be sort of the movie guy or the music guy in that scenario.
Well, a funny thing, I think Austin could agree with you that he's probably noticed that as well.
That is my job at pub trivia.
There you go.
Yeah.
Everybody's got mercenary work, right? You know, some kind of side deal. It's like trivia's mine. So.
Oh, that's very cool. So you're good on car rides then.
I try to be. Yeah.
One of the reasons we wanted to have Nick on the show this week is because you wrote an amazing essay about Heat for your Class of series on thefilmyapp.com.
Thank you, sir. I wrote about so the self-imposed rules of this series. So what I do is I take movies that are either 20 or 30 years old. I try to get as close to the release date as I can, but sometimes doesn't really work out that way. But my self-imposed rules are I don't do a movie that finished in the top 10 in the box office that year, and I don't do a movie that was nominated for any Oscars. And I'm a monk about that. I mean, if it was nominated for Best Song, I mean, I don't do it. So what was amazing to me, it's not so amazing that Heat wasn't a top 10 box office hit that year, but it does amaze me for all the technical mastery, at the very least, that this movie has, that it was nominated for nothing at that level. Not sound, you know, I mean, you figure sound mixing or sound editing, you know, for all of the attention to the specificity of the sound in it, it would have gotten that, but no, nothing.
You know, that even and as we go on here, this is going to become more obvious, so I'll just come out with it right now. This is not a movie that I loved, but even I could marvel sometimes at just, well, first of all, how great it looked and how wonderful it sounded. So,
sure.
Yeah, so I'm kind of surprised at that, too. I'm also a little surprised, and I didn't know this, that it wasn't in the top 10 box office. Now, I wouldn't think it would be like number 1 or number 2, but somewhere in the bottom 10 just because of the amount of stars you had in the movie.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it did reasonably well. I mean, it wasn't a flop by any stretch, but I want to say it made maybe like 50 or 60 million, which, you know, 21 years ago is pretty good. I mean, now people would probably call that a flop, right, relative to the cost. But I seem to remember, too, it came out at around Christmas time, which, you know, obviously they were going for the prestige Christmas rush, but I think people sort of treated it more, and critics too, really at the time, I think sort of treated it more like a, you know, kind of nakedly commercial movie rather than kind of the prestige that Michael Mann would go on to achieve.
Well,
right?
yeah, it's kind of a. I mean, there's kind of a inserted gimmick here too, where you have Robert De Niro and Al Pacino in the same movie, so
right,
like,
together for the first time. Right?
Yeah, and this is before that could even be. Was even like could be parodied or satire in regards. Robert De Niro now is not the Robert De Niro from back then.
No.
So.
And it's funny that you mentioned parodying, because I would argue that they parodied it themselves when they made Righteous Kill.
Yes,
a terrible movie that they made where they were dirty cops.
Which the only draw of that film was that Pacino was going to be working with De Niro in that film.
Right.
Essentially, I was reading this biography of Robert De Niro, and they talked about the formation of Heat. And De Niro and Al Pacino were really intrigued in the project because they would only have 2 or 3 scenes together. That was the initial pitch that Michael Mann was making to them. And then they were on board. Then they wrote the script around that.
Well, I mean, it's the very nature of the film in that Al Pacino is a detective on the tail of De Niro, who plays Neil McCauley, who is this master thief. It wouldn't make much sense for them to have all that many scenes together, because otherwise you'd be wondering, well, why is the cop not bringing him in, right?
Right. Yeah.
But there is, of course, the great scene that they have, this now sort of iconic scene that they have, sort of a tete-a-tete in a diner, and they the scene goes on for maybe about a 5 or 6 minute scene, but up to that point they've been creeping ever closer to each other, but you really get a sense of, these guys are going to clash. I mean, they are professionals, but they are going to have to throw down on one another at some point. And that scene too. I mean, I love the last scene when they, I won't spoil it for anyone. It's a 21-year-old movie, but I mean, if you've not seen it, I would hate to spoil it. But what's great about the last bit of where they do clash is, here's a movie that is set in Los Angeles, and very much steel and glass, not really a fetish, but just the focus on that aspect of LA. And the last 5 to 10 minutes of this movie take place, well off like this brushy part of this airport tarmac, well off of the tarmac, out in the weeds. And it feels like the last bit of undeveloped land in LA. And I think that's so great. It's like this, not terribly subtle Western kind of thing, but it's like, here's the last stake these guys could claim, right? Out of here in these dusty, nether regions of an airport.
Which is fitting that De Niro's character would die there. I guess I should. Spoiler. I guess
we were so close.
We were going to mention beforehand. Spoilers are kind of off here. I guess the idea is that once everyone sees the podcast and they see all the different movies, they can sort of cherry pick the ones they would be interested in. So I guess this is the one that I wanted to talk about right here. That this scene in particular, I thought, I agree with you. I think it's a beautiful scene, and that was a perspective that I hadn't considered before, about how it being sort of the undeveloped. And it's interesting you mentioned the Wild West, because it is a sort of they're searching for each other. They're hunting for each other, and it is in sort of the wilderness. But it is a scene that I wonder why. I almost wish it didn't exist. So this is gonna bring me to my issues, I guess, with the film, which I'd be happy to get those out of the way, and then we can gush over how beautiful I think the film is.
Yeah.
But De Niro, the whole point of Heat to me was this. I mean, they keep mentioning this several times, that you got to be able to drop everything in 30 seconds, and you got to be able to leave in 30 seconds. And then De Niro ends up falling in love with the girl from
Amy Brenneman.
Amy Brenneman, yes. Amy Brenneman. I was going to say from The Leftovers.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a second.
No, go ahead.
I don't know if there's any Veep fans listening, but there was a great joke about this movie on Veep where Richard Splett, kind of the dorky aide, says he invokes the movie Heat, and he goes, the one with De Niro and Brenneman?
Yeah.
No, that's hilarious.
And then he discusses his top 5 De Niro films.
Right.
You know how, like, when a dog hears a weird noise and turns its head to the side? Mm-hmm. That's how I was doing every time a new celebrity appeared, because I hadn't seen this movie since I was like 15. Mm-hmm. So it was rewatching the film, and I was like, is that Ashley Judd? Yeah. In my head, it's kind of turning to the side. Like,
is that Hank Azaria? Is that William Fichtner?
And then I was like, William Fichtner. Tom Sizemore? Has he been in a film in the past 10 years?
In the paper?
Yeah. I keep turning my head. But so the whole idea is that he has to drop everything in 30 seconds and leave. So the whole movie, it was not clear to me who the protagonist of the movie was. So I'm watching Pacino. It's clear to me now, and I almost feel stupid saying it, but I was watching it and I was like, okay, who's going to make the change here? Who's going to make the pivot? So there's this build constantly through the whole film that he's going to drop everything, right? And then there's the scene where the heat's coming around the corner. It's Pacino. This is foreshadowed throughout the film, not just literally by Pacino and De Niro in an earlier diner scene, but the fact that the scene, it keeps bringing up the 30 seconds anyway, and he has to make the decision to go back to Amy Brenneman's character, or he has to make the choice to run around and leave. If he'd have moved to the car and just got arrested, I almost feel like it would have been a better movie.
Yeah, I see that. I mean, I guess it's one of those things where I sort of felt you feel it's not so much empathy as it is pity for him. And I think what's interesting about the movie, and this kind of ties back into your comment about kind of the whack-a-mole of famous faces, right? That sort of pop up in this movie. I think that what's interesting about kind of the rhythms of how he interacts with his crew is that he has this sort of cold detachment. But I think you also, in kind of seeing those relationships that his right-hand men have with their spouses or their long-term girlfriends, what have you, you see that envy kind of creep in. Yeah. And I think you see it in ways that are, a little bit more subtle other than the obvious that he gets a girlfriend, right? I mean, but yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, well, the Val that led me to another problem is the Val Kilmer subplot to me only seems as, looking back on it now, it almost seems like a subplot as just a device in which the fulcrum of De Niro's pathos sort of teeters on. Like he does envy the attachment that he has with the Ashley Judd character, who ends up coming through for him in the end in this sort of act of weird I'm a killer, crime lord, true love type of thing. Right. But for De Niro's character, I just felt like the build that they had and the way it was brought up, that the ends almost didn't justify the means, in a way where now my focus is on Pacino as sort of the hero of this film, which at that point I could only take as serious as Pacino seems to be taking it.
Yeah.
And at that point, now Pacino gives a great performance in this movie. I think it's crazy, it's goofy, but it's also funny in a way that's, I don't know if the rest of the movie justifies, I guess.
Well, go ahead, Austin. Yeah.
I can comment, because I was thinking about, watch this again, I just keep forgetting how many insane moments Pacino has in this movie. He is in full Scent of a Woman screaming certain words in this.
Don't waste my motherfucking time!
Right.
Those are one of them. And I was thinking, I was really, really liking Robert De Niro in this film, watching it again. And I think part of the reason was because you have this very elaborate and delicate world that Michael Mann set up. Here is his vision of Los Angeles, and they talk so much about the kind of criminal that Robert De Niro is, and he embodies that cool, sleek, I think it's the word they keep using the most, about what he is. Mm-hmm. And Pacino is very much not that. And so Pacino, almost every other actor is on that kind of sleek, cool crime thing, and Pacino is screaming through it in a way that is, you can't turn away from him.
It's fun to watch.
It's very fun to watch.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I think I said something in my essay that, Heat maybe takes the silver only to Scarface for quotable shouts from Al Pacino, right?
Yes.
But I also think, too, what's interesting about this movie is that, so this movie is, for people who haven't seen it, it's 2 hours and 50 minutes. I mean, it's a sprawling movie, but I feel like it moves really quickly. But to my point with that, you could very easily have a 1 hour, 50-minute version of this movie. You could shave an hour out of it, and you would not lose the basic story.
Yeah,
right?
I agree with that completely. Yeah.
But I think to that end, you get all these second act scenes with Pacino and his latest wife. I can't remember how many marriages he's had, but they say, I mean, he has danced this dance before and missed the steps, and you start to see it crumble with her. You start to see it crumble with Natalie Portman plays his stepdaughter, and there is an entire subplot with her that you think is maybe going to sort of ease the widening gap between him and her mother, but it doesn't. And so what I was, in watching it most recently, what I saw with Pacino's performance was that the shouting is sort of like a theatrical intimidation. It's a character he's kind of putting on. I mean, it's still very much Pacino, but he has a lot of soft dialogue kind of later on, kind of these weary moments at home where he gets home and she wants him to unburden, and he's like, you don't want to hear about this. This is not what you want. You think it is, but it isn't.
Yeah, I remember the baby in the microwave scene.
Yeah.
About that in particular.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that what's interesting is that, yeah, it sort of holds up the sort of shouty Pacino thing, and it's very entertaining and very funny and it's all of that. But I think it's the obvious counterpoint to, De Niro has this sort of monastic quality, right? I mean, he doesn't even really bubble up with rage, except for when he goes after Waingro because he has to. The sort of this vengeance moment. I mean, he doesn't really have any outbursts. So I think that, what I like about kind of playing those two off of each other, just obviously from, loud versus soft, is that I think that they both find kind of these subtle notes within that make you feel kind of pity for both of them, and to the point of where if one of them doesn't change, I think that's okay.
Under the weight of the narrative, I feel like you have so much going on that I think it still works in a way like Magnolia works, in a sense that, let's say what I'm saying there is, pointing out a clear protagonist in Magnolia is almost impossible.
Yeah.
Maybe John C. Reilly, maybe Philip Seymour Hoffman, I don't know. But with this film, it is such an epic that it almost transcends that in a way. So I was fine with that at the end. I don't know. Basically, my opinion of the film when he decided not to go back for the car, and then which is an incredible scene once they leave and they go to that sort of wilderness off the tarmac.
Right.
It kind of left me yearning with an ellipses.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. What I think would also be interesting too is if they did the ending that you were talking about, you could just as easily say he's giving up the life that he feels he's curated for himself, right? I mean,
right.
If he stays by the car and he stands and he kind of takes it and gets arrested, I mean, he's leaving behind everything that he's built up, right? I mean, it's just a different way.
There's no life with her,
right?
Even if he stays with the car too, which is something I kept thinking in my head,
right?
Which has to be a big counterweight.
Yeah.
I think this emotion is really kind of what sets apart, to me, this De Niro performance with so many other ones. Because when picking our five for this, not exactly our top five, but the five we wanted to look at for De Niro, I wanted to see him at the 90s, kind of right before he does primarily comedies and starts to become a bit of a parody of himself. And he always kind of had those roles and Analyze This and Meet the Parents and whatnot as a figure of authority. But the figure of authority in this movie is so different than Goodfellas or even the cold authority of The Godfather Part II.
I think he's scarier in this film.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I almost got him that way than in Goodfellas. Goodfellas, I guess it's only because I have 26 years of history post Goodfellas, where basically when we say we're parroting Robert De Niro, we mean we're parroting the Goodfellas Robert De Niro. I feel like that's fair to say. At least I feel like the mobster, the monster
Sure.
De Niro. That
it's not the Mean Streets.
It's not. Yeah, and it's not the Godfather 2 one. So I don't know. Maybe that softened that for me.
Okay.
There's something a lot more. He's very loud and boisterous and little and wild in Goodfellas. There's something creepier to me about how silent and quiet he is, and how the fact one specific scene when he's on the turnpike and he just has to exit to kill the guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's scary. Like he can't let that go. And granted, we're talking about a guy when we're talking about justifiable homicide in films, this is totally good. This is the one person they kill in the movie that you feel good about.
Right.
But at the same time, he could have gotten away, but he had to kill him. Right. That's almost creepier for me. Like it's certainly than like Billy Bats from Goodfellas.
Sure.
Right?
But it also has this emotion to it with the Amy Brenneman connection there, because I forgot this film when I mentioned in episode 2 with the Deer Hunter. I said, have we really ever seen De Niro do that much romance? I totally forgot about this important subplot in Heat, because it's a very deliberate type of vulnerability that he's connecting with her. He wants to kind of see her more, but not in a possessive, aggressive way. He wants to have something, like you said, the connection he wants to have similar to the envy of the other people, but it is something pure. I made the whole character feel a whole lot more real, because he could have just been the super slick criminal that we've seen in a million films, but instead he felt a whole lot realer.
And he's not the only. That's not the only character that he obviously cares about in the film.
Yeah,
I mean, he cares about Chris, which is the Val Kilmer character, quite a bit. It's sort of like,
and it hurts their business because of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
but also at the very end, Chris is able to let go in a way that he is unable to. Right. So I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting. It's like the movie is. There's so much good about the movie. I just don't know if, for me, it ended up being in a melting pot of what I would call, like...
But he shines through. Like, he's, I think, made my favorite part about the movie, actually, watching it again.
Oh, De Niro?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that the character is... I don't know. I know we've all brought up interesting points, but just the ending is troubling to me, I guess. I guess that's the way... His performance is fantastic. I think everyone's good in this film. My favorite scene in the movie was actually... when Pacino shows up to the docks, and then they're there, and he figures out, well, what are they looking at? And then he starts to laugh and smile and say, oh, he's looking at me. He knows that he's being watched, and then the mutual recognition when it cuts to De Niro, who's taking a picture of him, knowing what he's doing with the smile on his face. Mm-hmm. I love that. I think everyone in this movie is great. I think a lot of parts in this movie work really well.
I think this is Michael Mann's most realized world. I think this really kind of captured so much of what he was doing. When other films, like, he has the look but not the story, or things are just a mess, this really kind of feels like everything that Michael Mann's ever wanted to do was made in this kind of 3-hour opus.
I mean, it certainly is. I mean, you think of, if you were going to recommend one Michael Mann movie to somebody, I mean, this is the one that you'd probably pick, right? I mean, even if Eric, like you said, you're not the biggest fan of it. I mean, if you were to say what movie encapsulates everything that Michael Mann does, as his MO, I mean, it's all in Heat.
I agree with that completely. Yeah.
And Austin, going back to your comment about kind of the romance, having, we seen De Niro do that. What's kind of interesting here is that I think there's just a sense of doom that hangs over that relationship from the start anyway, because, there is a sort of purity on his end, but like his purity is precision and control. And you get the sense that at some point she was never going to, say they ended up together. I mean, she was never going to have this career as like a graphic designer while he's out robbing, armored cars. I mean, she was going to have to subsume her dreams into his, sort of unidirectional thing anyway. So, but I think that he sort of senses that, and the subtle things with the envy that he has for the other guys, and the subtle things that he does with, kind of in the back of his mind, I think he knows that. I think that's why he walks away, because I think he knows he'd rather not ruin her by staying. Even if they get away, he would ruin her.
Oh, okay. No, that works for me. That works for me. That point, based on taking that, I was not taking that into consideration when I was thinking about the ending. I was thinking it was a purely selfish act.
Now keep in mind, I mean, this is a movie, I watched it, most recently for this, but I've seen this movie probably 10 times. I mean, I've obsessed over it for a long time. But I think that's kind of the interesting point, and that doom that hangs over him. But what's interesting is, Austin, you mentioned the term, vulnerable. De Niro went on to play, kind of cool, hard-ass, dominant characters long after this, but they've sort of become dimensionless, right? I mean,
absolutely.
And here you have a guy, that you're not really rooting for him, but you really come to understand him, and you do come to pity him. And there's as much tragedy with what happens in his life as what happens in Pacino's life too, on the relationship front.
Yeah, I think it helps that he's really a really good criminal.
Yeah,
I think that helps a lot. You see how sophisticated he is at his job. And how little patience he has for people that aren't good at the job.
Right.
I think that helps. I don't know if that's justifiable in any other way, but it does sort of it manufactures empathy when you're like, he's doing all the things he should be doing. Right. So when someone doesn't do them correctly, or something interferes with what you can see as a well-laid plan, you end up empathizing with him a little bit, right?
I always have that almost irrational empathy with characters, because Eric, you and I argued years ago when I was rooting for Gus on Breaking Bad over Walt, because Gus is just so good at his job, I respected him more.
Yeah.
So for both sides of the ethical line. If a character's really good at what they're doing in a film, I tend to really, really respect them. And I respected De Niro's character more than Al Pacino's character because I thought he was a better criminal than he was a cop.
It's like a fascination with work done well, right?
Yes.
Like I totally get where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, and when I consider that, I don't know, that drew me into the movie. The thing that drew me into the movie the most was the very beginning when you have the guy that De Niro has to go kill at the end of the film. Mm-hmm. I forget the character's name, escapes me. I know we have it.
Wayne Grove.
Okay, yeah, that's right. So he kills a police officer at the beginning of the film who, when he's giving the guy orders, but the guy literally can't hear him because a bomb's gone off right next to his head. He ends up killing him, and I'm totally fine with them robbing the truck. I'm totally fine with them blowing a hole in it. I'm totally fine with them stealing some rich guy's money. Like, I'm totally fine with that. But when they kill the cop, oh, wait, no, you crossed the line. Mm-hmm. It's like that was the point where I did that, and it was because, it interfered with a well-laid plan. Obviously, other than this cop didn't deserve to die, but aside from that, there are people that die. Indiana Jones kills like 1 million people in his films. Right. Okay, yeah. Like this is going to happen, but it kind of was like, man, you screwed up the plan. Like,
right.
And Michael Mann filmed that in a way that actually felt like the end of the world. In a way, like I had not seen this film until I saw this film first time before The Dark Knight. So I saw this film again, and when that whole sequence is going on, I go, "Oh, this is The Dark Knight."
Oh my gosh,
this is entirely The Dark Knight.
Yeah, I would have to say that for any shortcomings I think the film has, I would be remiss to not bring up. I say that every podcast. That's why I say that like that, Nick. I would be remiss to not say that this movie. I think this movie is more influential than it is great. I think post 90s, this is one of the more influential movies ever made because it didn't just have an impact on. It had an impact on all kinds of media. I mean, not just film. I mean, like Grand Theft Auto 5. Like this film wouldn't exist, or this game wouldn't exist. Like video games, books. I mean, everyone watched the opening scene of The Dark Knight, which is one of the more incredible scenes in recent years. They watch it and they go, "Oh yeah, it's Heat."
Yeah,
like it feels like Heat.
Well, I think that speaks to Austin what you were saying about the building of that world. I mean, the influence of it, from just kind of the specificity of that to just that feeling. Like, and again, it goes back to if you were going to recommend one movie, you'd say this one because when you say Heat, if you've seen it, like you conjure that immediate image and that feeling in your mind, and you think of the other things that have emulated that. Anyone kind of instantly.
Anyone filming in LA now had to have seen Heat because this is almost the definitive LA movie.
Yeah,
it is heavily featured in Los Angeles plays itself for a reason.
Well, I think in this, I know this is not the Michael Mann segment, but I think there was some sort of attempt to recreate that feeling with Collateral. I think. Too.
Yeah, at night.
Some of that.
I mean, entirely at night. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's interesting too. I didn't even think about that, but yeah, it's kind of there. I mean, they feel like Los Angeles love letters, at least for filmmakers.
Sure.
Oh, sure, sure,
definitely.
So you guys you sort of asserted that this was sort of the last stand for De Niro, right? Kind of going into the 2000s, he moved a little bit into parody.
There are a few more that we still like performances of his.
Like we were talking about, but when you're referencing performances you like in Stardust, which I think is a good movie,
we like Stardust a lot.
You feel like when you're talking only because it's Robert De Niro and we're talking about one of the greatest actors ever lived, at least filmography wise. You do feel like you're kind of scraping the barrel when the movie that immediately comes to mind next for us when we were thinking about which one would we want to cover.
Right.
Post 1992 is Stardust, which was a good movie that came out in 2007. It almost it does start to. I'm afraid at the very least that you have a whole generation of people that are watching movies now that appreciate Robert De Niro or don't appreciate Robert De Niro in a completely different way than I grew up, and certainly the generation before us did.
Now,
sure.
I think we have referenced this movie every podcast now by accident, but Nick, have you actually seen Dirty Grandpa?
I have not seen Dirty Grandpa.
I didn't know if you had reviewed it or not.
No, I haven't seen it. It's not out of a lack of interest because I mean, it doesn't look good. I'll preface this by saying I don't think it looks good.
Right.
But it's the sort of thing that it's kind of like, well, okay, De Niro doing a movie with Zac Efron is a little more interesting than him doing. I have seen Heist, which is a movie that he made with Jeffrey Dean Morgan, whom I refer to as not Javier Bardem.
Sure.
And
or not Robert Downey Jr.
Right. And Dave Bautista, which was like, I mean, that was like straight out of like Pacino's usual straight to video on demand kind of mode now. But Dirty Grandpa is this thing where, he's doing like this kind of raunchy sex comedy thing, right? And it's maybe it's interesting, maybe it's just as terrible as it looks. Who knows? I mean, I'll check it out at some point.
I want you to come back to the show and report back.
I will, yeah. I'll report back for all three of us.
A special report.
So, I mean, one of the interesting things I think kind of post Heat is that he did a more commercial version of this role in Ronin, which is obviously a more, stunts and firefights kind of spin on the same story. But, he is this very meticulous thief in this international robbery that goes, astonishingly wrong. And he has to sort of pick up the pieces. I think the performance that he's done since, it's probably my favorite one, and it's kind of a weird choice, is he did a movie in 2002, I believe it was, called City by the Sea. Which was, this was out for maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, I have not seen that.
I haven't seen it either.
And it's Francis McDormand and James Franco, I believe, plays Robert De Niro's son. Not a great movie necessarily, but it's really the last performance that De Niro gave, as a lead actor anyway. I really enjoy him in the David O. Russell movies from this decade, but it's sort of the last performance as a lead actor where he kind of tapped into something a little bit different than you would expect, which I think is what works so well about his work in Heat, is that he has that intensity, but he's also incredibly vulnerable. Like from the start, you just sort of like something is going to tilt this guy askew, right? His rigid worldview is just going to get knocked all about, and you're waiting for that to happen.
Ronin is a movie that I saw a long time ago. I just remember more for its car sequences than its character sequences.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's much more of a mainstream, they're selling it on Robert De Niro being this, kind of this badass. That's really what they're doing. And they sold Heat on that, too, I think, in a way. They did with Pacino as well for obvious reasons. In Ronin, I like Ronin. I don't like it nearly as much as Heat, but I think it was sort of maybe his attempt to do a more mainstreamy action type spin on the same character he plays in Heat.
Ronin was the first and only time I saw Ronin was the first night I got drunk.
Is there a connection?
I don't know. Maybe it's that 18-year-old angst. That's the type of movie you want to watch. It's like, I'm drinking. I'm going to watch
Ronin.
Or how? I was like 17. I can't remember, somewhere around that. But I do remember we were watching Ronin. Yeah.
Okay.
Funny story, right?
On that note, I think it's time to...
Robert De Niro is a part of so many people's rites of passage, right? For you,
Yes.
Eric, the first night you got drunk.
I would say, and what was weird is I saw Ronin before I saw Godfather 2 or Deer Hunter or Raging Bull, so I was coming at that from a completely different angle. Like I said, my feet. I think part of the reason why we wanted to lead off with Robert De Niro is there's just a fear that Robert De Niro may oddly go underappreciated.
Yeah, if you think back to the last 20 years, it's really easy to be worried about that.
Yeah, I think so. When really you look at some of his work, and he's the type of guy you could do you could do 2 Let's Take Fives on. You could at least, but you're kind of worried because he is one of the greatest actors ever, and he turned in some of the greatest characters ever, but it's just been a while, I guess.
Yeah,
and I think that was why we kind of wanted to lead off with him, right?
And that happens with so many actors as well.
Yeah. And there's another actor.
Pacino.
Yeah, I was right about to say that. Yeah, you got another actor in this film, in Pacino, where I think he's avoided that a little more than De Niro by doing less movies, maybe. Well, no, that's not true. Man. Yeah, no, that's not true.
He is more.
Pacino's done some really terrible, just for the money stuff. But
he still does the occasional Mamet movie or Mamet. He just did Broadway with Mamet, right?
Well,
Yeah,
he's on Broadway. He was on it all the time. He's one of the few actors that has won a Tony Award for originating a role and then winning it for doing the remount.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So when he did Glengarry Glen Ross a few years ago on Broadway, my wife and I were there and we were able to see it. And he played Shelley Levine. He played so Jack Lemmon's role from the film adaptation. Pacino played that role instead of Ricky Roma, who was Bobby Cannavale, who's like Pacino 2.0.
That's true.
But what was amazing about it is that, Pacino comes out and you expect, on Broadway, this kind of smaller theater, like you won't have to struggle to hear Al Pacino, right? I mean, you had to adjust. It took like 5 or 10 minutes to kind of tune your ear to the level he was speaking at because he was so soft, but it was so perfect for that character. So, I mean, he's still capable of great things. I think De Niro is too, but I mean, that legacy for, 20 years on, Eric, as you said, it's kind of hard to think, do people 10 years younger than we are, what do they just know Robert De Niro as, Jack Burns, right?
Yeah, I think in the end of the day, Pacino, even though I think of the two, I probably prefer De Niro, but just because I like more movies that he's done than Pacino. But at the same time, Al Pacino sort of exists in a bubble where he played Michael Corleone. You know what I mean? Yeah. And not to take anything away from certainly Jake LaMotta, which is I think one of the better performances, past since 1980, so it's been a long time. But he's Michael Corleone. Now, granted, Robert De Niro played Vito Corleone, but I think that will always, when you think of that, it's always going to be Marlon Brando.
Right.
So I think that's where Pacino has a little more protection. But again, that was a long time ago too. So yeah, it's weird. It's weird that those two sort of end up having very similar issues as their careers go on.
Yeah.
I think it's now time to wrap it up. This is our final full review of Robert De Niro. Eric and I will do an official wrap-up this Wednesday where we look at the 5 films we've covered and his career as a whole to give the final, cap on the
capstone, if you will.
Of the 5, yes. And then also we will announce our next 5 we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. You guys don't have to watch The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle for that capstone project, do you?
We're going to watch them all.
We're watching every. Well, oh gosh, where would I start if I was doing weird Robert De Niro?
Little Fockers.
Yeah, okay. You would end up inevitably having to do a Meet the Parents movie.
Yeah.
You'd have to throw in The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle because not only is it Robert De Niro in a Rocky and Bullwinkle movie, it's Robert De Niro making fun of Taxi Driver in a Rocky and Bullwinkle movie. It's just like layers of insanity.
Oh, I blocked that part out of my head. I saw that when I was a kid, and even as a Rocky and Bullwinkle fan as a kid, I'm going like, nope. I'm a young snob right now going, this is not good.
Yeah, he literally, and he like does full articulation. He just says, "Are you talking to me?" And it goes on, and you cringe.
Oh, wait, he's in Shark Tale.
Well, that's what you're talking about, Nick, is the personification of what we're afraid of, I think.
Yeah, right. You're absolutely right.
So you'll be able to catch that episode this Wednesday, and then next Friday we'll have episode 6, which you'll learn what that is on Wednesday. You can email us at letstake5@theartimmortal.com. You can follow us on Twitter at The Immortals Pod, which we share with the other podcast on The Art Immortal, which is The Immortals, the podcast I do every week, where we review one of the 1001 movies, albums, food, songs, children's books, and TV shows that you must see before you die, with a fun little twist on it.
You guys are insane. If you want to catch me, you can catch me on my YouTube channel where we do basically take the same type of principles of critique we're using here, applied to video games. And the Dark Souls 3 review is out now.
Yes.
So that's actually, I'm not lying to people this time. So it is out on there, and it's constant diversion, and that's the YouTube channel. Nick, where can we find you at?
You can find my reviews on the Film Yap, TheFilmYap.com. And you can follow me on Twitter too at Nick Nick Rogers Rogers 79. So Nick Rogers 79 on Twitter. You'll often find little mini reviews of things there that don't end up on the Film Yap. So you can find me both places.
Be sure to check those out.
Yeah, and Nick, thank you so much for being our first guest and for being our Heat expert.
No, I'm honored to join you guys. This was fun. I always love talking about movies, and especially this one, because it's one of my favorites. I always find something new about it every time, which is, for a 3-hour movie is not maybe really that surprising, but the things I find are things that kind of pop up as a surprise to me.
And we will have a link to Nick's Opus review on the podcast itself and the webpage at The Art Immortal. So check that out, and thank you everyone for listening.
All right, everyone, have a good one.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
You see me doing thrill seeker liquor store holdups with a Born to Lose tattoo on my chest?
No, I do not.
Right. I am never going back.
Then don't take down scores.
I do what I do best. I take scores. You do what you do best, trying to stop guys like me.
So you never wanted a regular type life?
The fuck is that? Barbecues and ball games?
Yeah.
This regular type life, that your life?
My life? No, my life. No, my life's a disaster zone. I got a stepdaughter so fucked up because her real father's this large type asshole. I got a wife. We're passing each other on the downslope of a marriage, my third. Because I spend all my time chasing guys like you around the block. That's my life.
Guy told me one time, don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner. Now, if you're on me and you gotta move when I move, how do you expect to keep a marriage?
Well, that's an interesting point. What are you, a monk?
I have a woman.
What do you tell her?
I tell her I'm a salesman.
So then if you spot me coming around that corner, you're just gonna walk out on this woman? Not say goodbye?
That's the discipline.
That's pretty vacant. No?
Yeah, it is what it is. It's that or we both better go do something else, pal.
I don't know how to do anything else.
Neither do I.
I don't much want to either.
Neither do I.